Awesome, awesome. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to start at 12:35. We're going to start in 1 minute, just allowing people to join the webinar. Again, we're going to start at 12:35. Thank you all. All right. Good afternoon, beautiful people. Thank you for joining. I see some people are still joining, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Time is now 12:35. I'm CJ Bell, Director of the Division of Small Business. I'm joined by my Deputy Director, Jamie Watts, and my Business Finance Director, Miss Jory Moore. Thank you all for attending. Excited to talk about Delaware Grocery Initiative. $700,000 is on the table for this cycle. So super exciting. This is arguably probably one of the most diverse grant funding opportunities we have, just due to the flexibility and due to the no matching requirement. So I'm happy to get into it. Let's go ahead and start. We're gonna go to the next slide so we can get into Grocery Initiative, right? So what is Delaware Grocery Initiative? It's a statewide initiative to strengthen essentially our food supply chain throughout the state of Delaware, right? We want to address this is one way to address food deserts, right? So places that are already a food desert or places that are on the brink of becoming a food desert. We want to provide support to those areas. And quite honestly, the best way to provide support to local economies, in my point of view, is to fund the businesses that already have relationships there. I don't think government should come in and just, take over everything, but should definitely be partnering with organizations and individuals such as yourselves that are really doing the boots on the ground work throughout our community. So next slide. Uh-oh, went backwards. All right. So we can't talk about where we're going unless we talk about where we have been, right? So we had the pleasure of doing the last cycle of Delaware Grocery Initiative in 2025. We did it around the springtime, I want to say between April and May. And we did it in a very quick turnaround period, a 5 week turnaround period from application to award disbursement. So I got to give a big shout out to our business finance team, also to my colleague Patty Cannon, who really helped drive getting this done and getting it done on time. So funding did not expire. So again, just to give you a quick snapshot, we anticipate we'll have more applicants this go around. 59 applied last cycle, 22 were awarded, 15 in Newcastle, 7 in Sussex, none in Kent. So that we're looking to change that. We definitely want to strengthen our support below the canal. And as you can see, we've increased the funding amount more than double, right? More than double. So we gave out $250,000 last time. We're now giving out 700,000. The award grant size before was a finite amount, right? So you could only get 12,500. That was the max you could get. And again, we had a very quick turnaround time to prevent money from expiring, and it's kind of use it or lose it situation. So I'm happy to say that we've learned a few good amount of lessons from that process, and I'm happy to present to you the 2026 cycle on our next slide, just to tell you a little bit more about that. So, scale funding model. For those that are familiar with Edge, we do this with Edge, right? There's no more fixed maximum amount you can receive. It is a best project, right? So you know your budget, you know the funding that you need better than we do, and we want you to present a request that reflects that, right? I'm gonna be honest with you. Do not submit for 700,000. Like, there's not going to be just one entity that receives this funding. I'm gonna be very clear. Do not submit for 700,000. But I do want you to submit for what you need to actually make an impact in the areas that you're choosing to serve. Too many times I've just seen in my experience dealing with nonprofits. Right. I'm just gonna use that as an example where you only have enough funding for like the program, but now you kind of have to bootstrap like any unexpected costs, any staff costs, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to prevent that by doing the scale funding model and making sure you have the resources and the funding you need to make the impact that you put in your application that we will approve, right? So that's a key difference before our last cycle versus now. We have an improved online application portal, right? Again, making it easier to have accessibility, making it easier for the committee to review, making it a more efficient process, right? We want to make sure you have all of the tools necessary. We are actually going to walk through the application. So I'm not going to just give you high level overview. I'm actually going to walk you through the application, kind of give you some tips and tricks, best practices, so you can put forward, quite honestly, the best application and increase your chances of receiving funding. So this info session will go up on our webpage, I believe, sometime tomorrow in the afternoon. We'll also make sure we put something in our email newsletter as well, just hyperlinking the recording, so that way you can watch this at any time. Right? We want to make sure you have access to the information and support that you need. The scoring rubric will also be online, right? This is something that, again, it's just easier to walk through these applications, or it's easier for you to fill out something and you know what you're going up against. So we don't want you to kind of be in the dark. We want to make sure you have every opportunity to have the assistance that you need, right? You'll also see some contact info at the end of this presentation, just in case you have additional questions after this presentation. But if you do have questions now, please put them in the chat. Our team will be actively monitoring the chat, and I'll make sure to address most, if not all, of the questions towards the end. Rolling timeline. Applications are going to open up on Friday. They'll be open for 30 days, right? So please, please, please do not wait till March 20th to put your application in. I won't be able to help you. Technical problems do happen. So I'm urging you to, at the very latest, make sure you finish your application on the 19th, at the very latest. Expect to hear back in terms of if you were awarded in mid-April, and then you'll have 7 days to sign your award agreement, right? So again, be on the lookout for your inbox. You'll have 7 days. If you are not able to respond in 7 days, we're going to go to our next highest scoring recipient, right? Because again, $700,000 might seem like a lot, but on the projected amount of applications we'll have, we won't have some for every single entity that applies. So next slide. All right, so who's eligible to apply? It is a broad audience that can apply, right? If you are a food producer, grocery operator, nonprofit, farmer, retailer, et cetera, et cetera. You can see them all on the screen. I won't sit here and name every single item, but there are a good amount of people that can apply. This is, again, like I said, probably our most diverse grant opportunity, just because of the amount of entities that are eligible and then the amount of uses that are eligible for this funding, right? Now, two key points I want to make. You have to have an active supplier ID registration, right? This is key because the state will not disperse funding to anybody without having their supplier ID. So I strongly encourage you, as you're going through your application, if you don't know your supplier ID, there will be a link on there that you can click on to go check the status, create an account. So that way, if you do get awarded, there's not a hiccup. You're not going to potentially lose funding because you don't have your supplier ID information in. So that can take some time after you register. It's usually a few days afterwards that you'll get that confirmation. So again, don't wait to the last minute. Don't wait till you get awarded. Just go ahead and schedule it now. It is something that will be used for any department or agency you receive funding from. So make sure you have your supplier ID registration. And then returning applicants in good standing. If you have received funding from us and you have not been in touch with us, do not have an impact report, you are not going to be scored very favorably in this application process, in this competitive application process, I will say. Next slide. All right. Who is not eligible? I haven't talked this long in a while, y'all, so I had to take a little water break. Who's not eligible? So entities seeking to refinance debt or pay off existing loans. This is not a grant opportunity to buffer to increase your coffers. It's just not that. This is not for projects that are helping outside of the state of Delaware. Other areas may need support, but we're focusing on Delaware and Delaware only. Incomplete applications. Most of the questions on the application portal won't allow you to go forward without putting information in there. So please, 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 please make sure you fill out everything that says required or has the red asterisk mark beside it. Next slide. Okay, what can be funded? Again, very diverse uses of funds, operational support, capital expenses, equipment purchases, and other projects that expand chain capacity, right? So that covers a lot. I'm happy to answer specific questions. Please put them in the chat. I'll leave this on the screen for a second, but if you have specific questions about what can or cannot be funded, this is the high level overview that I can give unless we're going on a case by case basis. All right, application evaluation. Uh, so this is your rubric, right? So I'll tell you, like I can tell you the categories and how much you're going to get for each one. Problem statement and supply chain context is going to be worth 20 points of your scoring. Project description and work plan is going to be worth 25 points. Measurable outcomes is going to be worth 15. Potential impact is going to be worth 15. Project commitment and oversight is worth 10 points. And then your budget is worth 15 points. So what does all of these categories mean, right? Your problem statement and supply chain context is going to be when you look at your application, that's going to be part of like, what is the purpose? What's your target audience, right? We want to be able to articulate what you're doing with the relevance of food access, availability, affordability, and continuity of healthy food, right? So you don't want to just do or submit an application and it's like, hey, we're gonna have a food pantry. Okay, but describe more than that. Is your food pantry located in a food desert? Are you planning on sustaining this activity past this grant, et cetera, right? Project commitment and oversight. A lot of people will neglect this one, I'll say, and this really just talks about your credibility, right? So can you make sure you list on here like the appropriateness of staffing, right? So if you're doing a monthly food drive, if you're doing a monthly food pantry, if you are providing a community kitchen, right? Like there's staffing needs that come with that, right? Are you a new organization? Do you have past results? Is this something that you're continuing, right? These are things that will be factored into that category. And then measurable outcomes, again, you want to be able to articulate very clearly what are you trying to achieve with this, right? Don't just say I'm creating healthy food opportunities. Give me something measurable that we can say from the beginning of your project to the end, this is what I was able to do. I was able to help 35 families, et cetera, by this date. Next slide. All right, the fun part. Let's walk through the application. I see a couple of hands on the panel. Please make sure you put your question in the Q&A, and I'm happy to answer it from there. So let's walk through the application, right? So when you go to the website, we'll make sure the website goes into the chat. Maybe I think the chat. Can we do that, or is the chat disabled? Okay, so we'll put the link to the application. You're going to click on that. This is the screen that you're going to see, right? Once you log into the portal, you have to create an account. And I want to be very clear because we've had a couple people where this happened in terms of Edge. If you are using a grant writer, you need to ensure it's your business email for the authorized user. If you don't do that, you're going to run into some issues about being able to be eligible or even being able to sign off on your grant agreement. So the email that you put down, make sure it's the authorized user, the business owner for your grant agreements and submissions. I want to just make sure I'm clear on that. So you're going to click on grocery initiative. Next slide. From there, you're going to get, you're going to get, there's a few steps that you got to fill out. So business ID, again, self-explanatory, your entity name, your tax ID number, mailing address, et cetera, et cetera. And then this is the slide where I was just talking about. You want to make sure the authorized signer, right? That email. So this is for all my grant writers. This is for the organizations using grant writers. Please do not put your email here. You are potentially going to end up costing somebody or costing yourself funding because the grant writer is not the authorized user of the entity. So just make sure you fill that out correctly. We go to the next slide. All right, entity type. So food producer, supply chain, transportation, nonprofits, et cetera, et cetera. You can put that there. Years of operation, you are not discounted. I know with Edge, there's a years of operation limit. There is none on here, but it's good to put, how new you are or how long you have been, doing the work that you've been doing. Make sure you fill out your supplier ID information, right? Again, that's how you are able to get funding. You can't get funding without having your supplier ID registration complete. And we are going to be prioritizing new applicants. So if you have received funding in the past, it's not to say that you cannot apply, but we are going to prioritize new entities receiving funding. All right. So now we get into some of the tips and the tricks, right? So your project name, it can be whatever. Just make sure it's clear. It does. You're not going to lose points for what you call your project, but make it something that is clear. Like people can kind of tell what you're trying to do. Your project purpose, right? This is key. Like explain to me what you're trying to do. I know there's a 500 character max. So that's going to usually equate to around 80, 90 words. So that's probably a paragraph or two, right? So it's not a super, this is not something where you're writing essays. We again, we want to make this very user friendly, very accessible. And the best way to do that is to get directly to the point of what you're trying to do, who you're trying to serve, and what challenges or obstacles are you looking to overcome with the work that you're doing, right? Who will this project serve? Again, what target community are you trying to address? The question that says what geographic location. So I'm gonna tell everybody this is a little trick that I literally tested out. I want to say a little bit earlier today. Google search, go on Google and type in state of Delaware define food deserts map. State of Delaware defined food deserts map. You will get brownie points if you can list the area that you're targeting and if it's in a food desert. And if you go on that Google search, you're going to see there's some legislation that's specifically tied to Delaware Grocery Initiative that defines what a food desert is in Delaware. Again, brownie points if you get that. It shows that you have a very targeted outreach community that you're trying to do, and it also shows that you've done your homework, right? And a competitive process like this, you want to stand out, and you want to be able to again very clearly define who are you serving, what area, and what does the results look like, right? So again, that's the brownie points that I'm gonna give for that question. I hope you fill it out. I am not going to be the food desert map for you. This is on you if you're looking for this funding. But again, I think that's going to be something that really helps people stand out in their application. Next slide. Okay. Name of project partners, stakeholders, contributors. This is a good one too, right? More partners you have, the better your application looks, right? And this doesn't mean just list everybody you're going to serve, but I'm gonna try to make up an example. Let's say I have a food pantry, right? I might be partnering with the Food Bank of Delaware, right? I might be partnering with a local restaurant where they give me like, any leftovers or additional supply, excess supply, right? I might be partnering with a nonprofit that helps me solicit the target community that I want to bring in. I might be partnering with a faith-based organization. Those are the people that you would want to list here, right? And you can be very simple in terms of you have a character limit. I'm going to list the name of the faith-based organization and in parentheses put what they're helping me with. Maybe their audience solicitation, right? I'm going to list Food Bank of Delaware in parentheses food supplier, excess food supplier, right? You can be pretty direct in a small amount of characters, but that is again going to show like, hey, this is an application that should be taken serious. This is not just a money grab or an application that really doesn't have a lot of thought or process behind it. But you want to be pretty clear on that. It's not to say that you can't get funding without having any partners, but usually taking on an obstacle such as addressing food deserts, such as providing healthy food in a community that doesn't otherwise have it, you're going to need partners on that project. So please be clear in listing who they are and how they're helping you. Right? Don't just list a bunch of names. Again, I'm trying to take you from minimum requirements application to an average one to a great one. So it's one thing to list a bunch of partners. It's another thing to list exactly how they're helping in your project. So describe how the project will positively impact the food system, including how it improves access to healthy foods for underserved or food insecure communities. Please don't just put, I'm providing healthy foods. Maybe this is like where you give a little bit of background for that area, right? Maybe this area has not had a grocery store. Maybe this area only has healthy foods when farmers markets are in season, right? Like there's a way to describe, and again, a short amount of characters, what you're doing here and how it's providing a benefit. Maybe you're partnering with the school, and providing healthy foods after school to their after school program, right? Again, you want to be detailed. You don't need to write an essay, but there's a way to be detailed and be concise. Specific goals or outcomes of the project. I'm gonna keep coming back to it because I've seen it before. Don't just put I'm providing healthy food to the community. Your application won't win. You want to be able to put on here, going back to the food pantry example, I'm providing, round the clock, additional food service for food designated food desert area, whatever it is, census tract. You can list the census tract and kind of get a little more specific there, right? So you don't have to just put I'm helping out the community with healthy food access. List like what area, how long are you going to do this? Is this a 5 month project? Is this an 8 month project? Is this a project that you've already been serving 100 families a month? And now with this funding, you're going to be able to serve 250 families a month. And the demand is there because that faith based organization you partner with has already told you there's a waiting list, right? There's ways that you can list that on these questions. And that's how, again, you go from a minimum requirement application to an exceptional one. General task activities to be completed during the project period, right? This goes back to staffing. Like, are there certain staffing requirements you will need, right, to essentially have a food pantry available 24/7? Are there certain staffing requirements you need to do outreach to additional families or additional communities? Maybe, maybe not, but those are some of the things that we're looking to see on the application there. What information or data will be collected related to the project? Again, we put a couple examples there just to make it a little bit easier to kind of like get your brain going. But numbers of meals, right? That's a perfect example of a specific goal for your project. Types of products sold, right? Number of partnerships. Are you partnering with farmers to bring healthy foods directly to households, right? These are things that you can list. Number of neighborhood delivery stops. Again, use that as a almost as a prompt for your specific goals or outcome question. We tried our best to make it where it's not spoon fed to you, but it also you have an advantage. You're not just left in the dark about how to interpret these questions and how it relates to the rubric. And then how do you plan on continuing this project once the grant has ended? This is key, right? Food access, healthy food access doesn't start and stop with the Delaware Grocery Initiative. It's a part of the solution, but it's not the end all be all. So, what other efforts are you making to sustain this project, to enhance it, right? Those are the things that we're looking to see on that one. Next slide. Right. And going back to the question that you just saw, what are you doing to sustain, right? That ties hand in hand with list any funding sources outside of this grant to complete this project. So don't just list a bunch of foundations or a bunch of grants that you have not applied to. Don't put like just list it. You want to that's minimum requirements. You want to put yourself in an exceptional category by saying, okay, Laughing McHugh Foundation, programmatic grant pending. I'm making this up. Please don't go to the chamber and think they have funding, but the Castle County Chamber of Commerce, $5,000 grant committed, right? Like those are the things that you should be listing here that again strengthens your application. We want to do that in a way where you don't have to write necessarily an essay or necessarily like, super long dissertation, but we want to show different, very like I call them subtle ways that shows your application is stronger than others. Next slide. Disclosures. Feel free to read these on your own time. There are certain questions you will have to provide an explanation to. It's not to say that you are automatically ruled out, but again, that's why we're going to be asking you for an explanation if you answer yes to any of the questions below. Document uploads. This is key, right? So let's say you run into a situation and 500 characters is not enough for, a good amount of the questions. I highly recommend consolidating that into one PDF, right? Please do not submit a PDF or Word doc uh, for each question. That doesn't, I don't think that makes the most sense. You might want, or you might have let's say kind of like a project overview, right? It might be a 3 to 5 slide deck that, uh, pro- further describes the program that you're trying to do. So that's something that you could upload here. Again, following documents are strongly recommended. Current balance sheet, that should be listed as required. That's just the typo. Your project budget is a required doc. Please do not submit an application without a project budget. It won't work favorably for you just because of some of the rubric categories as I mentioned. One is the budget, and that's 15% of your application score. So you don't have a budget, you're technically already down 15 points, and that can be pretty significant in a very competitive application cycle. And then, sorry, can you go back for me? You'll see there's some disclaimer language at the bottom. We know everybody is not going to have a profit and loss statement, right? We know everybody's not going to have, 2 years of tax returns, right? There is alternative documentation that's listed there that you can provide, right? So sometimes that might be in the form of monthly bank statements. It depends, but make sure if you have questions, please reach out. Don't just submit and hope for the best. I would rather you reach out with an overabundance of questions than to submit and there could have been a few little tweaks that we could have made for your application to actually make it to funding. All right, and then once you get through all of that, you're done, right? You sign. You make sure again the authorized signer on the business contact is the correctly listed person. You don't want your grant writer there. It will cause significant administrative problems. in the award process and potentially make you ineligible. So make sure you double check that before you go ahead and click the submit button, and then wait to hear from the division. So again, just showing you an example of what your certification would look like. You would sign there, and then you will wait to hear from us. And you're done. Cool. So if you have questions after this, feel free to reach out via email or phone, preferably email, just so I can make sure I get back to you in a fashion would be reasonable time. But I know we have some stuff in the Q&A, so I'll let Jamie take over.
Great. Thank you, CJ and Jory. We do have a number of questions in the Q&A. If we did not answer one of your questions in the presentation, please feel free to put it into the Q&A. We're going to get to as many as possible. If we are unable to answer your question, because it's very specific to your organization, please feel free to reach out to CJ, but also we will have a frequently asked questions and this webinar on the website that is listed in the chat right now as well for all of this information. So in the very beginning of the presentation, someone submitted, you've named this a rolling timeline. Are you making award decisions on a rolling basis or waiting until all applications are in before making a decision?
No, so rolling timeline was more so for us in terms of if we had to delay like our application window, more along that. But our timeline that you saw is the permanent one at this point. So the application window will be from this Friday, February 20th to March 20th, and then you can expect to hear back from us by mid-April.
Great. Can hospitals apply?
Depends on their project. So I would say the best way to answer that would be, you can send an email about what your project would potentially be, and we can give you kind of a yay or nay or direction from there.
And I would add that some people have also asked about different kinds of organizations. The same goes for all entities. It really depends on what your project is. How can someone determine if they have an active supplier ID?
JJ, do you I want to say it's through the portal, but JJ may have further information.
So you will need to contact the Division of Accounting, and I can put the URL in the chat, but you will need to contact them in order to determine if you have an active supplier ID. You can also sign up online for a supplier ID and register that way prior to applying. So I'll put that link, and there's frequently asked questions and a guide to sign up as well for that supplier ID. So I'll put that in the chat.
We have a couple questions around food deserts. What is the definition of a food desert, or are we using the USDA defined definition? And can you tell people a little bit more about what it means?
Yeah. So food desert defined by the state of Delaware is typically lower income areas where there is no access to a grocery store within at least half a mile in urban areas or at least 10 miles in non-urban areas. So if you Google state of Delaware defined food deserts map, you'll get a criteria on there. USDA does have a map. I would just, in an abundance of caution, I would go by what you see in state code when it comes to the Delaware Grocery Initiative.
Perfect. And can you repeat what you searched in Google to get the map?
Yes. Search state of Delaware defined food desert maps.
Someone is asking, how many grants do you think you will award this year? I know there's not a set amounts, so can you describe that a little bit more?
There's not a set amount, so it's tricky to answer that question. What I would say is if we gave 22 awardees for 250,000, I would expect that number to go up. at a reasonable rate the same way the total amount of funding did. So if you were to put a ratio on that, that would be my best answer or best guess at this time.
Is there a timeline for when funds need to be spent if they are awarded their money?
Yes, it needs to be spent within a 12-month period. So this is not an application where you should be submitting and have not done any work in the first 12 months.
Okay. Can you apply for multiple projects if you have more than one?
You can. I doubt that you will be awarded multiple projects. That would be something that will more than likely come out in the application review, but you are more than welcome to apply with multiple projects.
If you've already started the program and are looking for funding, can you still apply, or does this have to be a brand new program to yourself?
No, so this can be in a continuation, right? So we're trying to either fund projects that are newly going to tackle a food desert or already in the process of doing that. So you might want to expand your efforts, or you might be looking for additional funding for sustainability of your efforts. So yeah, you're more than welcome to apply.
Some budgeting and balance sheet questions. One, is the balance sheet required? And then will there be a specific budget form that's included in the application?
I'm sorry, that was like three questions. Can you repeat that?
Sorry. Is the balance sheet required? And will there be a specific budget form that's included in the application?
Yes, balance sheet is required. There's not a specific budget form. So you can submit that however you see fit. I would do my best to make sure it's eligible and not just myself, but other members of the committee can easily review that. So usually that comes in the form of Excel, but that's not to say that that's the only way you can do it.
Is this a matching grant? Do you need matching funds?
The beauty of it, no matching fund requirement for Delaware Grocery Initiative. Yeah, you're good to go. I would say to that question, strongly encourage you to have clearly defined partners, as well as the question that is right after how much you're requesting is what other funding partners do you have, if any, right? So listing committed or pending is definitely going to be beneficial in your application, even if you don't have matching funds. We're looking for sustainability, not just kind of giving out one-time grants.
Some clarification regarding the email that is supposed to be used. Can you explain who is supposed to sign and which email to use? The director of the facility, the treasurer, or myself that is filling out the application?
I, I think I answered that one, but the email for this should be the authorized signer for the organization or the business. So the legal person who is allowed to sign legal documents for the business or the organization. Their email should be used to create the business portal account and should be used in the application. Also, just as a reminder for our applications, the email that you use to sign into the business portal has to be the exact same email for the authorized signer, or it will not let you submit the application. So those things need to match. So it just needs to be that authorized signer.
If someone is given a reward, what are the reporting requirements that need to be done afterwards?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
If someone is given an award, what are the
Mhm.
reporting requirements that need to be done afterwards?
There will be an attachment to your agreement that outlines that specifically. So it's really going to tie to your budget, right? So what you submit as a budget, let's say you got 75,000 and you had, I'm going to spend 15,000 here. I'm going to spend 20,000 here. Like we'll want to be able to see receipts, documentation that you spent the funding in the way that you put in your application.
Can the project be multifaceted, or do you believe it would be more successful to pare it down to one specific project? For example, purchase of livestock and growing a facility for the increase in livestock for processing, or just keep it to the first part, the purchase of livestock?
That's a good one. I would say, I would probably say multifaceted, just because I feel like those two go hand in hand with your potential outreach to provide healthy foods and community. So, yeah, I would say multifaceted for that one.
Is this grant coming from ARPA funds as the previous First State Food System Initiative grants were?
No, so this funding is from the state budget. You can look at well, we're technically in fiscal year 26. It's included in the budget there. So it's state funded, no federal.
What if you don't have any partners other than your wholesale organizations?
Don't have any partners. It wouldn't hurt you. But I'm happy to have a conversation, offline just about, I want to make sure you're putting together the strongest application. And maybe if we talk it out, there may be a partner that you might not be listed or a stakeholder that should probably be listed there.
Okay. Uh, this is a good question regarding the system itself and saving of work. If you are writing the grant, but the CEO is the authorized signer, will you be able to save your work and get back into the grant? Or will an email go to the authorized signer to get back into the grant application?
So you can save your work. When you hit save and continue, it saves you at the last place that you stopped. So if you go through, complete the application, and then want the authorized signer to come in and sign it, you can do that. So you can complete the entire thing, hit save and continue on that last step to make sure everything is saved, and then they can go back in. So the part of the presentation where it said view, if you have a pending application that hasn't been submitted, it will say resume. If you click that button, it'll take you back where you left off.
It's a very good question because I know sometimes you don't have all the information at once, and that's okay. It will save for you. For listing the additional funding, should or can we list grants that support the organization, but not necessarily the specific project being proposed?
I don't have a question that's in the portal top of my head. I would say yes. I would say yes. You can list the grants that support the organization. That's fine.
Okay. I would recommend being clear about if it's for the organization or
Yeah.
being for the project.
Yep. Yep. That's a good point.
Okay. Does food access / food insecurity need to be the main focus of the organization, or can the organizations with a broader focus still apply as long as the program is focused on food access?
Yeah, the program, right? So, for example, we've had some faith-based organizations that have received funding, and that's not their primary focus, but they, laid out a very detailed program request, and that's what got them funded. So, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Is a SAM number required?
Yes.
What about a tax ID number and business license?
Tax ID, yes. Business license, is that a yes too, JJ?
Business license is not. We will do compliance checks. So yes, an active business license is required. You don't have to submit it, but it may be a part of the compliance check.
There are some specific questions about like how much people should individually apply for. I think that those are going to be case by case basis.
Yeah.
That is not something that's going to be able to be answered today without more detailed information. Um, can you combine this grant with other grants? So can you,
Combine it how is probably my question there. Like, yeah, my question would be combine it how? Is it are you using this as like proof of you have matching funds for another grant or I guess I would just need more detail, and they can follow up while we're still here if they want, or they can email me.
Perfect. And I'm also thinking with this question, since there is something in the application that states like what additional funding do you have? If you have funding from other grantors, that's okay.
Yes, yes, correct.
Okay. Uh, I think we are almost through them. Is staffing or vehicles a fundable expense? Depending.
Yeah, I would say yes by the guidelines, yes.
Okay.
I would be very clear why you would need a vehicle or why we would be purchased, like the grant would be covering the purchase of a vehicle, right? So it might be transportation. It might be, hey, I need to get to XYZ, communities defined as census tract A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So if you can provide a valid case, yes, I would say we have not funded in the past any vehicles so far.
We got a couple questions after we just said that we need a business license. What about for nonprofits? They're not going to have a business license.
Don't need it for
You don't need
nonprofits.
it
So
if you're a nonprofit.
So if you are a nonprofit, no business license is needed. If you are a business, you do need a business license. Looking to see if there's anything else that we missed. There's a number that are asking just very specific to their own organization. I would recommend reaching out with more details so that way we can accurately answer your question. I don't want to say yes or no that you can apply only based off of a very brief description and lead people the wrong way. Yeah, those are the questions that we have right now.
There was another question about reporting. Usually we give you a year, and then the following year after you're awarded, your reporting would be due. But as CJ stated, all that will be included in your grant agreement if you're awarded.
Great.
cool.
Thank you both for answering all those questions.
Not a problem. Thank you all for joining us today. Looking forward to assisting you all through this process. And again, if you have questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out. Have a good one.
Thank you.